This is Brannon House Live. Whether the issue is law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, government, or national security, Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now,
on this Wednesday night, February 4, 2026, we are going to be joined in just one moment by Chris Martenson. Chris Martenson is going to join us. Are you going to join us, Dolly? You come busting into the studio just as the program starts. I don't know. You hear me? You must know when I say good evening and welcome to the broadcast. I think you know English. You come busting in the door, by the way, like a boss. You don't. Delta used to just nudge her way in, kind of slip through the crack of the door. You bust your way in like you're in an old Western movie, pushing through the old, the double doors there like a gunslinger. You just come busting in like a bull in a china shop. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you showed up. America's glad you're here, Dolly. You know that? Come here. America's glad you're here. They're all asking, where's Dolly been? Yeah, you're a good girl. Come on up here. Why are you being so shy? Come on up. What you being so shy for? I mean, you're going to interrupt the program. At least say hello to everybody. Huh? You want to eat or what? Did you not get fed tonight? Have you had your dinner? Do you need to go outside? You need some yogurt, your pumpkin. We'll go through all your words. All right, Dolly's here, so I guess the program can begin. We're going to be joined here in just one moment by Chris Martenson. Chris Martenson. I want to talk to him about the Epstein files. I want to talk to him about the dollar going down. I want to talk to him about what does the country look like when this thing finally, the dollar finally crashes and people realize this. The banks, the derivatives that the banks are holding. How about the trillions of dollars in what Mitch Vexler talks about? The trillions of dollars in fraudulent bonds in our local communities. Is the whole system based on fraud from local, state, and federal government? Wow. Let's talk to him about some of this tonight. What does he think is going to happen? I have some, here we go. We got Peter Schiff saying the dollar is going to collapse. The dollar is going to be replaced by gold. We're headed for an economic crisis. It'll make the 2008 financial crisis seem like a Sunday school picnic. I don't think it's going to crash tomorrow. I don't think. How long does Chris Martenson at Peak Prosperity think the system can last? Through this year, 2027? I want to ask him if he thinks it'll collapse before Trump gets out of office. And then let's talk about the replacement system. Is the replacement system even ready? Is the replacement system, stable coins, et cetera, even ready? And what would the world look like for several days, weeks, or months should this happen? And there is no alternative system that's really functional. I mean, because you're talking about computers, computer programs. How many people are going to know how to operate this stuff too, by the way? All right, let's talk to him. Then I do want to talk to Mitch Vexler and get an update because Mitch has filed, here we go. Mitch has filed before the Supreme Court of Texas, and he may be getting ready to go there. We'll see, and argue about the school bonds. And we'll get into that a little bit because this is, again, an update. We're one of the few outlets covering this, but this may end up becoming a national story. I want to ask Mitch, I'm going to ask Chris too, is the whole system from local, state, federal government based on lies and fraud? We're all seeing what's going on with the Epstein files and this elite group up top that supposedly can get away with these things, and it looks like they're going to. The fraud, billions in fraud in Minnesota with the Somalis that's being reported. Now there's 18% of hospice care in America is coming out of one county, LA County. Are you seeing anybody in handcuffs and being perp walked related to any of these frauds? Or is there a system and the system protects itself? So I'm going to ask the question tonight. Are we to a point where the politicians and those who benefit from the system and employed by the system, whether local, state, or federal government, is the system pretty much based all on lies and fraud? if indeed the school bond and the bond fraud is as Mitch Vexler says, I guess this is what kind of thing that happens when you cease to be a moral people. Isn't that what one of our founders said? We've given you a constitution that is meant for a moral and religious people. To keep your word, honest, don't steal, upright, virtuous. And then I want to talk to Shahram. Talks with Iran and the U.S. kind of fell apart, and there was talk about maybe an imminent strike by Iran on Israel or America on Iran. But now the talks this afternoon that were kind of called off because Iran isn't wanting to really compromise, apparently they're back on because of pressure from the Arab states onto President Trump to get these talks back on. And I think they're going to take place this Friday in Oman. I want to ask Iranian American Shahram Hadian about that. Okay. And then we'll get a quick precious metals update from Michael Weiner because gold is popping back up around just under $5,000 an ounce. Silver is around $88 an ounce, I think. Anybody else, Logan, that I'm missing? That's Shahram, Chris Martenson, Vexler, Mitch, Michael Weiner, Shahram, Nick. I guess we got everybody. All right, guys, we're brought to you by you, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Please don't forget about us. Don't underestimate even a $10, $20 a month contribution. It all adds up, and it's so very, very important that we have your support so we can keep pushing out programming like this for free. Don't forget about our Sunday night church service. I'm teaching through the book of Daniel. I'm in Daniel chapter 2 right now. And then this fall, we're going to do our free Worldview Weekend National Conference. We've decided for the first time in 23 years to make it absolutely free, even though the building, renting it will cost us over $10,000 to rent that building. Friday night and Saturday, we're going to take a few free will offerings and hopefully you'll support it as well so we can offer this training Friday night and Saturday there in Milwaukee, and hope lots of you will come in and join us on that Friday night, October 23rd, 24th. We'll be announcing the speakers soon, but mark your calendar now, October 23 and 24. How long before people can register for that, Logan? He has it ready, but he has to have one guy fix one thing. All right, so maybe we'll get it fixed and we can announce it before the week is over, because it's free, but you will need to register. But again, thank you for your support through our foundation that helps make so many of these free ministry broadcasts possible. Worldviewfoundation.com. Do I really need to stop and promote Swiss or Numi, Gatatana, Bella Grace, Worldview Talk? You guys know about all these great products. worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Please go there, use some of these products, support what we're doing by supporting, I think, your health at the same time with Numi, which is loaded with glutathione to detox your cells. Some studies show may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Then you can get on the Gatatana. That's a phytoplankton. One scoop's the equivalent of 90 billion plant cells. Boost your immune system by feeding your cells down to the mitochondria. Okay, and remember the guy that was that developed this, who caused this to come about, got a terminal diagnosis, started eating the phytoplankton, lived another 10 years. And then, of course, we have Bella Grace at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. We have the Bella Melt, which stimulates your body's natural GLP-1 is stimulated, okay, through the Bella Melts. These are selling like crazy at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Look for the bellagrace.com. What is it? Melissa House BG is what it is. Melissa House BG. But you'll find it at worldviewtube.com/sponsors or melissahousebg.com. All right, there you go. And then, of course, worldviewtalk.com for your solar generators, your satellite phones, and your bulletproof backpacks and all those great things. Well, there they are right there. Okay. Water purifiers, water filters, so much more is there. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Join me now is Chris Martenson. Be sure to follow him. His website, peakprosperity.com, peakprosperity.com. And on X, he is at Chris Martenson on X. MartenSon We can talk about a lot of things with him, and we're going to do that right now. Chris, welcome back to the broadcast, our first interview for 2026. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. What an exciting time. Glad to be back. Has it only been 1 month into 2026?
I know, right? We've crammed a lot of activity into that first 30 some odd days. Let's talk about gold. Gold and silver are back up. They're around, silver is getting back up to around the 5,000 range. Silver, that's gold, is around the 5,000 range again, just under. Silver is around the $87 an ounce range. And yet we're seeing and hearing more and more talk that we're going to see the collapse of the dollar. Here's the latest pronouncement by Dr. Doom, as he's been known for years, but he sure seems to get a lot of it right. Let's look at what Peter Schiff has to say.
And the world is now pulling the rug out from under the U.S. The dollar is going to collapse. The dollar is going to be replaced by gold. Central banks are buying gold to back up their currencies. They're getting rid of dollars. They're getting rid of treasuries. We are headed for an economic crisis, again, that will make the 2008 financial crisis look like a Sunday school picnic. The biggest difference between the crisis that we're about to have and the one we had back then is this one is all in America. It's not going to be exported to the rest of the world. It's not a global financial crisis. It's an American financial crisis.
Wow, it's an American financial crisis. Okay, how much of this is being orchestrated by our dumb, stupid decade after decade, 100 years, 1913, so more than 100 years of stupidity on our part, right, with centralized bank. Andrew Jackson got rid of a central bank, said don't do this again, explained all the reasons why it was stupid and dangerous and theft and would destroy the country. We didn't listen. We got a central bank again in 1913. So how much of this is us? And then how much of it is also now taking advantage of us and our stupidity by foreign governments, BRICS and others that are using this as economic warfare to collapse us from within. So kind of interesting. This is going to be pretty much isolated to America. We're going to collapse the dollar eventually. I don't know the time frame. You can tell me. But everybody else pretty much is going to go on. Some of that has to be, again, internal, but some of it has to be external, right?
So 90% stupidity. You're looking at a old gold and silver bug. I started buying my first gold in 2001, silver same year. And just because I was looking at how the system was running, I read the book by G. Edward Griffin, Creature from Jekyll Island. It explained how money creation happened. I understand humans well enough, Brandon, to know that, I see where this is going. Now, it's taken a lot longer to unfold than I thought because the Federal Reserve has done unbelievable things in terms of printing money. We call it QE, all this fancy stuff, but they've done everything they can except do the right things, okay? And so if we really want to date where this broke, Nixon slams the gold window August 15th, 1971. 1973, they institute, and we know this from a cable that I have a copy of that went between London and New York, where they said, American citizens are going to start buying gold again legally in December of 73. How can we keep the price from telegraphing that they would prefer to have gold instead of dollars? It sends a bad signal. And they said, let's start this thing called futures trading. And we can implement such wild swings of volatility that people will lose interest in owning that asset class. Or we can clamp its price down long enough that people lose interest. They developed a paper market for gold and silver that they said, you know what, we can use this to nudge and control whether people invest in this or not, because they didn't want you and me having any sort of exposure to gold and silver. So that's what they did. They ran it beautifully. It ran for a long time. And in the case of silver, I've just really gone all in on silver and told my subscribers about that because of this one thing. For the last 6 years, we have been structurally in shortfall in silver. More industrial and investment demand than is coming out of mines, which means we're eating into stockpiles in the world. That you can't do that for 6 years in a row. This will be the 7th year in a row. And what's going to eventually happen is it's going to break those markets in the sense that we'll have a price in the US for silver. We'll say whatever it is, it's 85 right now. Well, might be 50, might be 150. Won't matter. You won't be able to actually get any. We'll just say, here's a price, but you can't get any at that price. So that's not a market. A market is where supply and demand and price come together. The price is the clearing mechanism to make sure you always have some supply there for a given amount of demand. We have fake markets now, Brandon. They're totally disconnected from reality. And that's a self goal. right? And he's asked, how much is this, the bricks? 90% of that is us running financialized schemes and scams, letting the paper guys and gals in Wall Street run amok. And they now got too big for their britches. They sold a lot of silver they don't have, right? That's the essence of a futures market, right? You know this, right? Which is, I could sell you a 1 silver futures contract today on the market and you could buy it. It would be commit me to deliver to you 5,000 ounces of silver. But what if I don't have any silver at all? They don't care, right? But if I went on eBay, Brandon, and sold you a Lamborghini I didn't have, we'd know exactly what just happened. That's fraudulent. So we've actually taken fraudulent concepts and enshrined them into markets and said, oh, but this is legal and it's how it works.
Bingo.
Well, that's what's breaking.
And isn't that interesting? Because on radio today, 1 to 2 Central, I started out my radio program before I went to our reporter on the ground in Israel, stating that I had a conversation with 2 different people in the last 24 hours saying, do you realize there is hardly anything in our country at the local, state, or federal level that is not based on abstract fraud, undeniable, 100% abstract fraud. For instance, and I said, when your police detectives in your town are running around today investigating crimes, flashing their badge and asking questions, they may be, in fact, investigating something that needs to be investigated and then turned over to a prosecutor and actually prosecuted. But do these investigators know that their local government from which they derive a paycheck is likely one of the largest scams, Ponzi schemes, and criminal activity going on in the town? The biggest lawbreaker is actually likely the local government that employs them, from which they get their paycheck. And if you were to say to a local detective, I would like you to investigate what appears to be a fraudulent bond, school bond and other municipality bonds that fund schools and the fire department and the police department from which you derive your paycheck. And it's all based on a Ponzi scheme of inflating people's property tax, a property tax that is set by a central appraisal district that was created by the school board. So when the school board needs money, they say how much they need, and then their creation, the central, what is it called? The central appraisal district, whatever it's called, they'll go out and they deliver the appraisals, thus the property tax necessary to meet that number. And then they issue bonds, and they have to keep issuing bonds to keep making people whole who have interest on this first set of bonds. So they're chasing money after money to make good on the first promises, which is that not the very definition of a Ponzi scheme. And if you said this to your local police detectives, they would look at you like you're crazy, number one. And number two, they would show zero interest in looking into this, because you really expect your police detectives to investigate the city that's their boss. So I said, at the end of the day, if everything Mitch Vexler has been telling us at mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD, we might want to put that on the screen. If everything he's saying is true, and it appears to be from the court briefings and everything else, there is hardly an institution from local, state, or federal government that isn't as criminal or more so than the very people they arrest and prosecute and throw in jail. And that includes the judges that sentence these people, who derives his or her paycheck from this same criminal enterprise. And then you add in the child trafficking and the pedophiles. And when are the American people going to realize we have been financially raped, our liberty stolen, our dollar stolen, our purchasing power stolen? And when are we, the people, going to finally rise up and realize we have the law on our side? We don't have to be lawless. We are the law. We're the law. Individuals coming together collectively to defend individual rights. We are the law. What man creates, man can alter or abolish. That means government, according to our organic documents. But the average American sits here not realizing even your local police department, which you may love, they are funded on a fraudulent scam. And if they found out about it, they wouldn't even investigate it. But yet they're on their moral high horse, flashing their badge and investigating people in your community, who, by the way, may need to be investigated and prosecuted. But the audacity, the moral high horse to investigate and put people in jail when the crimes being committed by the local government probably surpass the petty theft they're investigating.
By orders of magnitude. What did we just learn from the Somali daycare scandal, right? So now everybody's worried about the ICE riots and all that, but we found out that there are 49,000 NGOs operating in Minnesota alone. Every one of them with their fingers in some sort of like a Medicare scam, a daycare scam, most of them just involved in scams and frauds, right? And immediately, those should lead to handcuffs right away. These aren't even hard to investigate. I mean, this is probably for a decent FBI team, about a 10-minute investigation, right? And I haven't seen one person with their hands in handcuffs yet. And I get the sense it's not actually going to happen because what you're hearkening to, Brand, is so important. It's fraud all the way down. It's fraud at the very top. It's fraud all the way at the bottom. And the detective comes out to make sure that they catch the meaningless bit player to show that we're doing something about this. Look, we're fighting crime, right? But if the whole system is criminal, all you're really doing is putting window dressing on it, saying, look, we caught this guy who like had this fake eBay scam or something like that. But we're not, this is, we're down to it. We're down to it. With these revelations, I got to tell you, I thought I was pretty radicalized knowing what I know about money creation and how fraudulent Wall Street is. But these Epstein revelations, right, about him and all of his buddies being caught up in everything from creating the pandemic, figuring out how to co-brand it, the next pandemic, so they could make trillions off of that, watching that they were involved in selecting NATO people, watching that the Rothschild Bank was paying him $25 million for his risk algorithm, on and on and on. It's just, listen, if he was, obviously Epstein was involved in fraud, blackmail, probably, at least power brokering. And right now, the Assistant Attorney General of the U.S., Todd Blanche, is like shrugging, going, well, we think there's nobody we can really prosecute. Like, you haven't run an investigation yet. Follow the money. Why did Les Wexner give him tens of millions of dollars, a plane and a house? Why did Leon Black of Apollo pay off all those 8 girls? Why did the Rothschild Bank give him $25 million? Where did the money come from? That's where any of these stories should start. And of course, they're not interested because you know the answer as well as I do, right? But that's filtered down all the way. And where it's going to hit everybody listening to this hardest is when you find out that possibly your local community, your local city, your local municipality has been running this fraud you just spoke of, where they spend money willy-nilly. The teacher salaries always go up by X%. They get this big stadium from somewhere, whatever the story is. And the way they pay for that is they jack up your property taxes, which is a tax on unrealized gains. It is completely antithetical to anything we should be thinking about. But it basically means you and I, we rent our houses from our local government. And so there really isn't, listen, we don't have freedom. We do not have the appearance of freedom at this point. That's what's coming true. And we have a 2-tier justice system. Obviously, those for them is different from those for us, on and on. So as we look through all of this, Brandon, I got to tell you, if I had a message for your listeners, it's you better brace for impact because this is fourth turning stuff. When people lose the sense that that the social contract has been broken, well, then none of us have an obligation to live into that social contract anymore. And things get weird from that point in time. I can't tell you how many people, Brandon, I've talked to in the past month who said, why am I paying taxes? Mm-hmm. I don't understand. Because I'm paying them to pedophiles and Satanists. It doesn't feel right. Oh. And
doesn't feel right.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah, of course they are. And they're on social media talking about how they're done. They're not paying taxes anymore. And I don't know if that's going to come true or not. And you have the Deputy Attorney General saying this just the other night.
Well, as some of the people we saw on camera at the rallies, is there any chance that any of these individuals who partied with Epstein and engaged in, relations with minors will be prosecuted? Any chance?
I'll never say no, and we will always investigate any evidence of misconduct. But as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein, and so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein. And some of these men may have done horrible things, and if we have evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand that. It isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. It isn't a crime to have
didn't look like that's all that was going on some of those photos. I mean, if the photos could speak, some of them look pretty bad.
That's right. And unfortunately, photos can't speak. And so we need witnesses and we need
Are there videotapes that you all have? Or well, some of the people
Are there videotapes? I would like to hear the answer to that, because apparently
there's videotapes.
There is videotapes, right?
Of course there are. His whole house was wired up. We know that.
And I hear that what they have released to us is just is disturbing as it appears to be and is, depending on the pictures we're looking at, as disturbing as it is. This is unfortunately and sad, and it's not to minimize what's been released or to justify it in any way or to minimize it. But I am told that what hasn't been released would just blow the minds of Americans. That what we're seeing is kind of the benign stuff in comparison to what is the horrific stuff they do have. Is that true?
Yeah, what Todd Blanche just said there is completely unacceptable. He's like, well, if we had any evidence, well, let me tell the Department of Justice how to conduct an investigation, okay? You interview witnesses. There are all kinds of witnesses out there who said, hey, I've never been interviewed and I was raped by these guys at his properties. 2, you collect physical evidence, right? The FBI didn't even go to Little St. James Island and never went to his Zorro Ranch, ever, not once, to collect evidence, right? When they went into his brownstone, they actually called his lawyer and said, hey, there's some hard disks and things here. Do you want to get these before we collect them into evidence? And they went away, and the next day they were all gone, right? It's like, come on, right? This is just, obviously, they're not running an investigation. And of course, as I said, you also follow the money. So besides witnesses, physical evidence, videotapes, money, and you would actually, Todd Blanche, you would bring these people in and you would put them under oath and you'd start asking them questions, because that's how an investigation is done. He's shrugging. He's like, what are we going to do? We don't really have anything. I was like, because you haven't tried to gather anything, obviously. Now, the biggest smoking gun document, Brandon, I saw come out was that Bill Gates, right, who tried to slip antibiotics to his former wife because he got some STDs and brought him home. That's the guy we're taking health lessons from, apparently. He had made Jeffrey Epstein, through a memorandum of understanding, a legal document. He gave him power of attorney. He gave him complete freedom to run this global enterprise that he wanted to run. He gave him immunity, right? And also said that he would pay for any trouble that this guy got into. So listen, Brandon, you and I know each other. But if you ever came to me and said, hey, Chris, I want to indemnify you completely, and by the way, I'll pick up the tab for anything bad you do, like I'd tell you, Brandon, you've lost your marbles. Nobody does that, right? Who does that, right? Out of all the people in the world, this billionaire decided this was the guy who's the right person. He's going to indemnify him. Come on. Listen, they're treating us like children, and that's part of this whole thing. This is obviously, as bad as it appears, it's probably 10 times worse.
It's probably 10 times worse. And then you add the 145,000 children that Tom Holman says we just found, thankfully, unaccompanied minors. But why were we allowing all these children into the U.S.? And according to Tara Rodis with the whistleblower HHS, but on my show many times, they were giving them to people they knew these children didn't know. They knew these children didn't know them. And children were reportedly being abused and calling the hotline, which rarely, if ever, got answered. But why was our government knowingly allowing that? Does this not go to the behavior that's already being documented through the Epstein files of the behavior of the ruling class of America? So this is just par for the course, right?
Seems to be par for the course, unfortunately. And of course, there have been lots of cases throughout history in the past as well. Here in the United States, in Europe, other places. And so I think we're just sort of it's sort of being exposed now. And I think this is the power of X, right? If it wasn't for X, I wouldn't know any of this stuff. It's not on the New York Times. It's not on CNN. It's nowhere else to be seen, right? So, but now I'm actually reading the source documents and seeing, who's saying what and all this stuff. And it's bad, right? And they have their cute little things that they do with each other. They have these coded language. They talk about pizza and cheese and hot dogs and things, right?
And ordering appliances and whatnot at huge multi-$1,000 prices, apparently, right?
An $8,983 single item from Wayfair, which has this whole scandal behind it and all of that, right? So
I don't even know what all that means, but I saw the Twitter on it.
We can go into that in a bit if you want, but we don't
have to go into that. I'm just saying I heard it. I don't even know about what it means, other than it seemed to be some kind of cover and code language that you're talking about.
Yeah. So somebody added it up and said, hey, how many times have you personally arranged an ice cream party or a pizza party by email with your friends. Like, I can think back to my whole life, probably 2, right? And Epstein did it hundreds of times, right? So something's, they're really fascinated with like bad food, or it's something else. And it seems to be exactly what it appears
Coded
to
language.
be. So it's coded language, right?
So let's get to this then. Back to Mitch, who has been pointing all this stuff out to us.
Yeah. Mitch is awesome, by the way.
And
He's
Mitch
solid.
is supposed to be on the program here in just a few minutes. Again, this, folks, is at mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD. This is said to be the school bond, the municipal bond fraud, Ponzi scheme is said to be $17 trillion. Now, you add that to the fact that the dollar's going down. Can you tell me, and I'm going to ask Mitch this too, can you tell me at what point do the derivatives, which I think 1 or 2 banks are holding derivatives equal to the global GDP, what causes eventually the derivatives to snap and become a weapon, financial weapon of mass destruction? I think is what Buffett called it at one time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then what causes these bonds to collapse? In other words, at what point do we see the average American completely wiped out from their bank to their bonds they've invested in at their local community, or bonds that have been put into their personal retirement accounts, pensions, IRAs, and the little people, mom and pop, average American, who worked hard, paid their taxes, had their dollars debased, their purchasing power stolen. Now they find themselves financially ruined, literally ruined, not even sure where they're going to get the money to pay for the next grocery run. Is that where we're headed? And what's it take with the dollar declining for this avalanche to finally break and mow people over and suffocate them?
Well, the actual trigger, we don't know. In retrospect, we'll say, oh, is the Archduke being shot, or some event, right? Well, that's what'll happen. But here's the thing. A derivative is a contract. That's all. It's an agreement. You and I could write a derivative contract. It'd be a stack of paper about this thick, a lot of words on it. And it says, oh, if the temperature next January is above 30 degrees, I owe you $1 billion. And if it's below 30 degrees, you owe me $1 billion. That would be a derivative. They're bets. Okay. And the main use of a derivative is usually an interest rate swap. So you think interest rates are going up. I think they're going down. Or it's a credit default swap. I've bought, like, I want to insure like a muni bond from Denton, Texas. Make sure Mitch tells you about that county. Or whatever. They're bets. And here's the thing, Brandon, it's an insurance policy in a sense. I'm saying, listen, I bought all these bonds from Denton, Texas, but I don't like them. So I'm going to insure them. And if they go bad, I collect. But who's on the other side of that? So because it's an insurance policy and it's run in what's called the OTC, it's over-the-counter market, right? It's between you and me. So here's the fun thing about insurance, particularly when it's underwritten by people or small firms or hedge funds or whatever. They work great unless you really need them. It's like if I was insuring Paradise, California last year and 2 houses burned down, probably going to be fine. But if the whole town burns down, it's not fine anymore, right? So derivatives work until they don't, meaning they're kind of calming. But if something snaps in the story, right? So the United States decides to bomb Iran and Iran somehow lands a missile on one of our carrier groups and sinks a ship. Something that really causes people to snap all of a sudden, that creates a situation where you can have the derivatives market suddenly go bidless. And all these people who thought they had insurance suddenly discover they have no insurance at all. And that's when the whole system freezes up. And that's when you get into this other topic called the Great Taking. But the whole system is basically very fragile right now. It was designed for low volatility, meaning things should never really do anything but stocks go up and to the right, bonds stay calm, everything stays calm. When things get more volatile, that's when all of a sudden all of these underlying assumptions people had break. And when they do, it's just how Hemingway went broke. Slowly, then all at once. I think that we had our first liquidity tremor January 26th. Just happened.
That was the bank. Was that the bank? Was that the bank that failed?
Yeah, that was too small. No, there was a moment right around 10 o'clock in the morning on the 26th. People talk about, they saw that was the first big plunge in gold and silver. So maybe you were talking about that, but Stocks took a hit at the same time. The Japanese yen spiked, the dollar spiked, all the other currencies took a dive, and Bitcoin fell off hard. Put that pattern into a picture, and it says something snapped in the market. I don't know who, but something snapped. But they put it back together for now. But remember, we saw Bear Stearns break in February of 2008. That was a tremor. And then, nothing really happened through that spring. But, by fall of 2008, the tremors were increasing and then things fell apart. So that's how I look at the markets. That's how I look at the world, is you have to track all those moving pieces at once. And listen, we had a financialized system of finance that said, and financialization, very simply, is making money with money. I don't make widgets, I don't make products, I don't improve any goods or services, but I make a lot of money with money. I'm a hedge fund, I'm private credit, whatever, all that stuff, right? So that whole system of financialization, that's what's actually at the end of its rope right now. And that's starting to have its little tremors. I think Japan is the place that this all gets started, but it's a personal guess. And that's why I'm a big, big advocate. People need to, understand how the system of money has been put together, how it went off the rails for the last 30, 40 years, why it's probably at the end of its runway right now, so that you can figure out what you need to do. But it's the same stuff you've been talking about forever. Hard assets, gold, silver, real estate, things like that.
So when do you think, what is the time frame on this? Is this 2026, 2027? Do we push it out to 2028, election year?
It could be tonight, but I actually honestly think it happens over the next year and a half to 2 years.
Do we make it through the 2028 election?
I don't think so.
So this will collapse on Trump.
Yes, he's probably going to have a very bad midterm if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. So we'll see, and then we'll have a fractured government, right? Even can you imagine Trump up against either both a Senate Democrat or a congressional Democrat-led House? That'd be a stalemate. Nothing would happen.
But you see the dollar go crashing before the end of his term if he fulfills his full term.
Well, what I actually see is the dollar, paradoxically, it's going to spike first and then crash. And the spike is because it has nothing to do with the dollar being great. It has to do with how many bets are out there that are denominated in dollars, how much leverage is out there, how much people have borrowed. So, quick example, the carry trade. I'm a U.S. hedge fund. I'm like, I'm going to get $100 million from my friends and family. I raise all of that. Then I go to a bank, prime broker, I don't know, Goldman, JP Morgan, somebody, and I say, hey, I'd like to lever this up 6x. So now I have $600 million. I go over to Japan. I can borrow it at, last year I could borrow at 1% or even 0.5%. Cool. So I have $600 million. I borrowed at 0.5%. I go over to, say, New Zealand, and they have government bonds trading at 5%. And so now I'm making 4.5% spread on $600 million. It's pretty tasty, right? So that's called the carry trade, because I'm carrying money from one location, a low cost location, to a high return location. And so that's the carry trade. It works great until it stops working, and then they have to reverse all of that. And so it's always kind of a slow build on the way in. Is more, every bank has done this. Every major bank I've looked into is part of this. And it's fine, and it develops over many years, if not decades, but then all of a sudden they don't like it anymore, and everybody tries to get out all at once. And it's a bad deal. So that's where we're at.
So what does it look like when this happens? When this happens, this also is going to bring down all the bonds as well, right? As the dollar declines, the bonds and the school districts and everybody's going to it's going to be a really big problem, right?
Yeah. So what happens is that, so let's imagine I'm this hedge fund. I've borrowed $500 million on top of the original $100 million. Now I need to pay that $500 million back. And it turns out I have a whole bunch of like New Zealand or Australian bonds in this story. What did I say? Maybe Australia, whatever I said. So I have $600 million of Australian bonds. I have to sell them. And then I got to scurry over to Japan and pay that borrowed money back. And then I got to take that back and pay off my prime broker, right? And by the way, when I have 100 million and I've borrowed 500 million more, if I lose 18%, I've lost 100% of my friends and family's money, and everybody hates me. And so believe me, I'm going to be real motivated not to have that happen. So let's track this through. I have to sell the Australian bonds. So all of a sudden their yields start to go up. I take they pay me in Australian dollars because that's what they sell their bonds in. Like, I don't want those. I need yen. So I sell them. So their currency starts to go down. Now I buy the yen. It goes up in price, right? And then I come back over here and I have to dump the yen. And so the yen goes back down again. And I bought dollars. So everybody tries to do that at once. It's very complicated. And everybody can't do that at once. So what does it look like? We wake up one day and we find out that Nomura Bank in Japan has suddenly realized that it's like lent money that's never coming home again because they lent it to people who blew up in this carry trade. And so they don't know what to do. And the Japanese authorities, they shut their markets down just for a little while, mind you. They shut it on a Friday. We might open late Monday. They don't open on Monday. Next thing you know, because all our markets are cross-correlated, we find out that our markets start to go real haywire. Things start to get pretty janky. They shut our markets down just temporarily, just for today. Oh, it's tomorrow too. Oh no, there's some bank failures. This is how these things sort of progress. They start with a news event, and they say, "Oh, it was Nomura Bank. That was what the problem was. That was the spark." You say, "No, it's 20 years of doing carry trades that maybe we shouldn't have done that with, right? And that was stupid." So that's actually the game. It's too many moving pieces, but it's going to break at some point because.
But go back to the school bond issue. That same scenario could be applied to the bond issue in your local community, right?
Well, so what happens when you get into a general liquidity event is you sell everything, right? We saw this in 2008. Gold got sold. It went down 35%, after things broke, and then, carried on after that. But why did it sell off? Because if you get into this situation, Brandon, and you suddenly your bets have turned against you, if you have it and you can sell it, you sell it. And so everything gets sold. That's why you see these market routes. Like, where did these trillions go that used to be in the stock market? They didn't go anywhere. It's just that suddenly there were a lot more sellers than buyers, and people sell what they can. And so everything gets sold. And so the school bonds will go bidless at some point, particularly if people figure out. And by the way, enormous lawsuits are going to come for fiduciaries that put munis in grandma's portfolio because they're safe. But these munis, with even minimal cursory investigation, which Mitch will take you through, you can prove these things are worthless. There's no chance they could ever pay them back.
And so that means that they don't get their pension check. They don't get their return on investment of the bonds. Money stops coming to them. They lose their money. They get nothing. And some people are counting on that money for their retirement and monthly bills. And so what you're talking about again is you wake up and the system is completely collapsed. What does America look like? It's like a financial, economic nuclear weapon has gone off. What's the fallout? What do the next 24 hours into the next multiple weeks look like for the average American, particularly the average American who is retired and has a pension and on a fixed income, and that was their livelihood for paying bills and groceries? What does life look like for the average American?
Well, speculation, but I'm pretty sure that would be the impetus for ushering us all into stable coins, right? So they're working on them. They've got the Genius Act, the Clarity Act. They're working on stable coins, which are they're little electronic pieces of code, each one of which would represent $1 backed by a treasury or a cash equivalent on the back end. If things really break and freeze and there's panic and oh no, and I can't pay my bills, and the government comes along and says, bad news, good news. Bad news, all your stocks and bonds seem to have gone to zero. Sorry. Good news, we're going to make you whole with these stablecoin things, and here you go, dollar for dollar. We've made you whole. If you pay attention to what just happened, I used to have ownership in things. So a bond and a stock gives me legal contractual rights of ownership over assets. When those go away and I'm replaced with a stablecoin's backed by debt, a U.S. Treasury bill. And so now all I have is like something I can spend. So the ownership goes away, but I think that's where we're headed.
And does that take a week or two to roll out, or are they preparing this transition so within 48 hours, everybody's back to the grocery store? How's that work?
Well, I think they're planning on that, but I submit to you it's not going to work that easily. It just can't, right? Because I know people who can't figure out how to log into a website that they've been to 20 times, right? I mean, it's just not everybody's. This requires you to have, technological savvy It's going to be a whole new system, so it's going to be buggy as all get out, right? It's a government system, worse, so it's going to be really buggy. All of that. So I can't see it going that smoothly. I know they're going to try to do something, but if we were being smart, we would have multiple parallel currency systems, hard cash, maybe silver and gold or gold backs or something like that. We would have maybe you could throw stable coins, but we would also have, like, you should have multiple things. So if one of them is not quite working, we're totally dependent on our single system. If it fails, it gets dark quick, right? Nothing functions. So
if you're not getting your paycheck, the police and sheriffs stop going to their job, more than likely, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Most people go to the grocery store every 2 to 3 days. That's how they live. How are you going to buy stuff? I mean, at what point do you not have society break down with absolute pandemonium and lawlessness until the new system is rolled out and functional? I mean, that several weeks could be enough to end the country as we know it, unless you, I guess, roll out the military and implement martial law.
I don't think there's a chance in the world they could roll it out in a way that wouldn't result in a ding to everybody's living standards, right? We were here. The best they can do is roll it out, and we're here, and we hope we don't go all the way to there, right? This is the best they could do. The thing that's concerning, of course, is that, a lot of people who are in banking, who are in government, who are in this, they haven't had actually any business experience. I just did this thought experiment at my site with my subscribers today because they're asking the same questions. And so they said, well, what does this mean? They'll just roll out stable coins. And I said, okay, let's imagine I'm a procurement agent for Walmart. What do? I call up my Chinese person that I'm ordering from and I say, hey, I know we used to pay in dollars, but we have these things called stable coins now. My government tells me they're as good as a dollar. They just happen to be trackable, traceable, programmable. And by the way, my government can amend or rescind their utility at the flick of a switch. But don't worry, they're the same, right? Like, I don't think that's going to be a good conversation because the currency, Brandon, that's actually the least important thing in a functioning economy. It's the agreements, the contracts, the understandings, the belief systems, the arrangements. That's the network of the system. And the currency is just the thing that sort of like bounces across that. It's not the thing itself. Well, that's where we've gotten confused as a nation. We're like, oh, this thing, the money is the important thing. It's not important. The rest of it is the structure of it that's important, that delivers all of our goods and services, all of our productivity, all of our quality of life is all dependent on having a system that I honestly don't think a stable coin fixes. They're fixing the least important part of the issue.
Well, at this point, no one's going to trust contract law. They're not going to trust your local officials. Your local officials have been either knowingly involved in a massive Ponzi scheme to financially rape its own citizens, and many of them being elderly senior citizens, or they were too stupid to ask the questions that would have told them this was all a Ponzi scheme. And so you don't even trust your police department, your police chief, your sheriff deputies. You don't trust them anymore because your local prosecutors. Who do you trust anymore, right? You don't trust any of them. Your city council, your county commissioner, you don't trust any of them. You have no functioning government because no one trusts them. They were in on the take. They were all getting their paychecks on the back of this massive Ponzi scheme. You certainly don't trust your state government, and you certainly don't trust the federal government, which is, apparently run by people that like to molest children. And so as you understand, the whole system breaks down because the republic is all based on
trust.
Trust. Trust. The rule of law. My word is my bond. Contract, a handshake. I do what I say I'm going to do. It's all based on that. That all starts breaking down, and you can't even replace the system fast enough or train people on how to get over to the new system, much less, as you said, get other people that even want to take it anymore. At that point, I don't know. I think you end up with a civil war. Is that going to be the tripping point of a civil war in America?
Well, there'll be a lot of very unhappy people, which is certainly one of the ingredients of a civil war like that. Particularly people, I think, who live in cities are particularly exposed in this story because they're most dependent on food and fuel coming in 24 hours a day, right? And all the garbage.
And how long is it going to be before gangs get control a mafia type group grows up and gets control of the distribution center and those things, and your police department is impotent against some of these folks.
Well, this is so important because
now you're talking about the Soviet Union and the rise of the Russian mafia type stuff, right?
Well, absolutely. And anytime you study a currency that's collapsed, like in Zimbabwe, for instance, it was a really tough 8-year period, warlords, all that stuff. And the people who survived and thrived had really good, tight social networks. And of course, that's sort of like my gang is strong enough that your gang thinks it's too much trouble to come to take what my gang has. Yeah, if you're all alone in this story, you're highly exposed in this story. And that's a problem. We live in a very high trust society that enables individuals to basically live all on their own without really deep social connections, right? And unfortunately, we've imported a lot of people from what are called low trust societies. That's Somalia, for instance, right? They come in here and they're like, I can't believe you're going to allow us to do what we're doing. And they just they're just like, wow, you guys don't understand that either I'm stealing from you or you're stealing from me. That's a low trust society, right? You can't have prosperity. You can't have a high living standard in a low trust society. It just doesn't work. So that's actually one of my main critiques of what the Democrats have done with their open borders is they have knowingly installed people from low trust societies into our high trust societies, and then not just look the other way, but enabled them to run various grifts and scams and frauds. As long as they got a little taste on the back end from that whole thing, you got to donate to the party or whatever the thing was. But that's the most corrosive thing you can do to wreck a society, ruin its currency, ruin its trust, ruin its sense of rule of law. All three of those are in play right now.
And I got an article for Let You Go over at Front Page Mag. How many illegal alien cops are there anyway? Illegal foreign nationals are policing and wielding the power of life and death over Americans. Article by Daniel Greenfield talking about this, from New Orleans to Maine, he says, to Illinois. Mm-hmm. Again, I just don't see how. I don't know the time frame, but it seems as though everything is in place for absolute society. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I want to be a realist. And I'm looking at all of the scams and the fraud, and that pretty much everything, even down to your local government, is based on massive fraud. And I'm like, when this collapses, how are you going to rebuild it when you, as you're saying, everything is really based on the idea of trust and a common agreement, a common compact among people that this is how we behave. This is what we allow. This is what we don't allow. This is what will happen to you if you do this. It's kind of the Old West. Even if there's not a good sheriff in town, the shopkeepers and the blacksmith and the preacher in town, they'll take care of it. And they'll either take you out with a shot or hang you by the nearest tree. But the word is, there is law and order here. There may not be a sheriff, but there is law and order because we, the people, have agreed our laws and our principles are this, right? And if you cross them, you're going to get either taken to the ice house and put there in chains until a judge can come through, or if we have to, we're going to carry out capital punishment. Well, again, that requires a set of societal agreements, standards. We're losing that in America. We have medical people talking about killing Jews, killing ICE people. We have medical professionals saying, I don't want to treat MAGA people. We have people wanting to eliminate the life of police officers. We have people that have been in our military saying things they shouldn't be saying about the American people. We have things going on in this country that now, as we've said, involve people from other countries who are getting a badge and a gun, and they come from some of the most corrupt countries in the world. I mean, I'm not, again, trying to be doom and gloom, but I'm trying to warn my audience. And I guess my question is, in closing, is this about all we can do is warn them that this system is approaching the end, whether it's 12 months or 24 months. And I was watching a financial report last night that was saying, I think it was Peter Schiff, they're expecting the cost of things to go 2 to 3 times higher. That as this system breaks and you move into the basement of the currency, that everything, the cost of living is going to be 2 to 3 times higher. Well, how can most people can't afford it at the price it is now? How are you going to afford it at 2 to 3 times higher? And a man who has nothing left to lose has nothing left to lose. And at what point does crime explode and lawlessness become so great that just that in itself is overwhelming? So I guess I'm trying to say to people, the system is at its end. I don't know the time frame, but you better understand the realities. Your politicians are lying to you. If they don't know this, well, that's their fault. We know it. More than likely, they know it. And the system is set up to protect the system. So even if your local sheriff or local police department and local detectives and local prosecutors knows that your entire city and town is based on a financial Ponzi scheme sham, they're not going to say a word because their paycheck and pension is all based on that scam. The system protects itself, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it does, and it treats us as sort of the cows, the batteries, the fuel source in this story, and so what do you do about it? Well, listen, I've been counseling the same things you have for a long time. I think people should be resilient, right, and that cuts across a lot of dimensions. But what it starts for me, Brandon, is if I can pull this up. I have a new offering. I've recast myself. I'm doing one big giant report each month. I call it the Renaissance Report. And it's right in line. This is why I could talk about all this so off the top of my tongue, because this one is my first volume is about, well, when money dies. And I think people, Brandon, need to understand why that might happen. Because if you understand like the context, then you're not just sort of like, it's all this random stuff. I don't know what's happening. You need to understand how our system of money is put together. And that's the foundation. And once you understand how it's put together, you come to my understanding, which is, look, it can't continue forever. Regardless of fraud and deceit and bad people and demons and all that stuff, it has a math problem built into it. And we're running out of runway to pretend the math problem isn't there. Rich people have started to figure this out, right? Not that there's anything better about rich people, but I'm talking fairly financially sophisticated people. You got Ray Dalio saying, hey, I think all fiat currencies are in trouble here. You've got all kinds of like Templeton, all these people, like the people who've like been in the finance business for a long time are going, this is bad.
Warren Buffett said that one of his greatest fears has always been the debasement of currencies.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and debasement, the old Roman term, they would take real silver and put base metals in it, right? Lead. So debasement, right? So, but now they can just click it up, like they can debase at the speed of light now. So it won't take Romanesque amounts of time for this to sort of play out, and that's what the concern is. So what do? So A, you understand what the context is. B, you got to start making new decisions, right? So if I had bonds and stuff, I would start selling my bonds. I start getting rid of my bonds. I don't get financial advice, I get financial opinion, but I'd start getting out of these 401ks, which I never got into one at 19 years old. Someone tried to get me into one. I said, no, I just got done. Maybe, I don't know if it was 19, how old I was, but I was probably 19 or 20. But I realized that those were basically paper IOUs, and I didn't want to do that. Defer your taxes. I think taxes will probably be more expensive in the future now. I'd rather pay my taxes, take what I have now, and put it into hard assets. I've never owned a stock in my life. I've always been a hard asset guy, and investing in my own organization and studio and equipment and everything. You've been here, you see what we've done. So I've never done all that. And I don't get financial advice, I get financial opinion. But I wouldn't be holding these 401ks. I wouldn't be holding all of these paper IRAs. I wouldn't be holding all this. These are all promises to pay. I'd be getting out of that stuff now, because when people run for the exits, it's unfortunate, and the building's on fire, a bunch of them are going to be piled up with dead bodies at the door. Yeah, and I agree with all of that. And again, I don't give advice. I give financial education. But there will come a time, I think Mike Maloney is correct. Silver will become unobtainium, and gold will become unaffordium, right? So you won't be able to get your hands on it, or you won't be able to afford it. And that's the whole point, is that I am seeing the world's financial elites are piling into gold, a little bit lesser extent, but also silver, but platinum, palladium, other things, whatever they can get their hands on, because they are realizing that this reset is coming at some point. Does it come this year, next year, or a couple of years? Hard to say. But I believe that they understand what I've known for a long time, and I think you know as well. They used to say possession is 9/10 of the law. I think possession is 10/10 of the law. I think if you don't own it and you don't hold it, you don't own it.
And so
that's
think
where
you think your dividend is going to show up in your bank account to spend or the check in the mailbox. Good luck. And by the time they've done that, it's been so debased it won't buy you a Snickers bar anyway. So again, I don't give financial advice, I give financial opinion, but people better hear what we're saying because you're trusting in a system that's built on fraud. That's all I can say. I believe from my heart of hearts, everything is based on fraud today. The foundation is fraudulent. True? Is that an overstatement?
Yeah, it's just I haven't dug into it, so I'll get the numbers a little wrong, but I just found out that LA County has fewer old people than all of Florida, but somehow had billed out 6 times as much as Florida or some number like that for hospice care.
18% of the healthcare is coming out of one county, LA.
Yep. Unbelievable. And how is that not immediately resulting in arrests and handcuffs and perp walks? Well, you know as well as I do, the people who've been running that are in the protected class, and that's where things start to really break down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we can't even get the Republicans to pass the SAVE Act. It shows that you are a registered citizen with an ID to be able to vote because the whole system is, again, based on scams.
Well, in Senator Toon's defense, only 83% of Americans want it.
Only 83%. Yeah. Well, there it is. If you want to get his report, sign up for it. The Renaissance Report. It's now out, Volume 1. Check it all out at peakprosperity.com, peakprosperity.com. We always enjoy our visits. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure's been mine.
Great interview, guys. We'll be right back after this break. The dollar is dying. It's going down, and inflation is soaring. Are you prepared to lose through inflation your life saving, your purchasing power? I don't think you have to. I would urge you to go right now to worldviewgold.com. Worldviewgold.com. Get the free packet of information available because you know what? I've been working with this company for about 17 years. And I trust them. Now, look, I don't give financial advice. I give financial opinion. And my opinion is you should do your own homework and your own due diligence. And I think that starts with getting the free, no obligation packet of information on how to put gold into your IRA, how to acquire physical gold or silver, or what is known as numismatic, 1933 and older. Education is crucial. And it starts with this free packet at worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com, or 1-877-864-1072, 1-877-864-1072, worldviewgold.com. Joining me now is Mitch Vexler. We just were talking with Chris Martenson about Mitch, and Mitch joins us now. Mitch, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me back and giving me the opportunity to bring everybody up to speed with regard to the Supreme Court. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, let's get to that, in fact. But before we get to that, I was talking to Chris Martenson, and I said this also on radio today at 1 o'clock. In the last 24 hours, I've had conversations with 2 people, and I said, I have come to the conclusion now, based on interviewing so many smart people like Chris Martenson and Mitch Vexler and others, that there's hardly nothing in our society that is not based on fraud and lies. From the local, state, and federal level, the whole system seems to be based on lies and fraud. And I gave the analysis. I hate to repeat myself because the audience has heard it, but I want you to hear it. I said, it's kind of ironic when you even think about the fact, I live in a nice town. I live in a nice city. It's so family friendly and we're all MAGA people. Maybe if you live in the South and you're thinking it's all buttoned down and everybody's doing good deeds. And you find out even down in the South where people are conservative in the Bible Belt, the chances are overwhelming that your entire city and town is funding their police department and schools and everything on fraudulent bonds. So while your police detectives and police are out arresting people for shoplifting and other things, which is certainly wrong, and those people should be stopped and held accountable, how do you morally justify arresting people for shoplifting when your whole city or town could be, and maybe is indeed, in some cases proven to be, based on fraud and a Ponzi bond scheme? Do you agree that and now we have the Epstein files that keep getting dumped. Do you agree that pretty much now in America, everything is based on fraud when it comes to the government at the local, state, and federal level. Fraud, fraud, fraud. And the system protects itself. Is this a true statement or is it an overstatement?
No, it's a proven statement. If you go to my website under the articles, letters, and discussion section, you will see what I've written in the last 40 days, and all of that is now quantified, which is exactly why we are at the Supreme Court of Texas. That is what has happened. Just recently in LA, just yesterday, they made an announcement having to do with hospice care. Hundreds of millions shot down the drain on hospice care that doesn't even exist. So there's an article in there that I wrote called Socialism is a Noun. And that document lays the facts out as to what is happening, how it is happening. And the bottom line is that people in government, let's call it socialists, on both sides of the aisle, they do exist on both sides of the aisle. But the point of the matter is they have taken positions that have benefited their personal pocket at the expense of not just the property taxpayers, but also at the expense of income taxpayers. These frauds are real. What you're seeing play out in Minnesota, Minneapolis, these are socialist policies. And what I've said in that document is that socialism should be qualified and codified into law as illegal. Part of the problem here is they've known for generations that this was an ongoing problem. I left Canada because of this problem. The bottom line is, and you mentioned Carney a minute ago. Well, Carney is Trudeau, idiot squared. There's simply there's no brain cells here. These people exist to create socialism. They are socialists. They steal taxpayers' money, put it in their pocket for pet projects that don't have the right to exist in a free capitalist society. This is the problem, and now it is quantified. We've laid it out.
And I was asking Chris Martenson about the decline of the dollar, what's happening to our dollar. And it seems to be this is a U.S. situation. He was explaining that a lot of what we have, no, he's talking about the dollar collapsing in the U.S., that this problem we have is pretty unique to us, where we could collapse without it, spilling over per se and, being what other nations experience. That our problem with the collapse of our dollar, he's saying, is really isolated to us. Do you agree or disagree?
No, if we go down, let's put it this way. We're the best kid on a really bad block. And the really bad block is extremely sick. So China, by way of example, their debt to GDP is hovering around 300. Allegedly, our debt to GDP is 128, both of which are insane, but that is where they are. China is no better than we are. The UK is absolutely in worse condition than we are, even though their currency at the moment is sitting at $1.37 of the US dollar. Germany, as we speak, is dancing on a depression. The European Union is going to blow apart more than likely, and it will have to go back to individual countries rather than the European Union, because that was a failed social construct from the word go. Do you know that in Italy, the lira, on the eve of the announcement for the European Union, the lira was destroyed by 32% overnight. So when you start taking these things into account, what is the nexus of every single problem here? It's socialist policies. Socialist policies lead to fraud. Why? Because a socialist policy prohibits any of the socialists that are responsible for it from being held accountable. This is the case that is now at the Supreme Court here in Texas. It's the lack of accountability. That's the issue that's now on the table.
And I want to go to that. I want to go to that case that you're referring to, but I want to ask you the same question first that I asked of Chris. What is going to happen if this dollar continues to slide? The dollar's debased. We have more massive inflation. And what's the tipping point for everyone in America to know about the fraud and the Ponzi scheme of bonds? What's the tipping point for that? The debasement of the dollar at some point has to play into this, right? I mean, as I said, asked to Chris, what causes this avalanche? Whether it's derivatives by the banks or 17 trillion in bonds scheme? What is it that finally triggers this? And what does the day after and the weeks after look like for the average American?
We're there now. So watch this for a second. Right now, today, there exists roughly 5.1 trillion of outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt. The median household income does not exist today to pay off the principal or any component of the principal. Well, okay, that's 5.1 trillion. What they've been discussing recently, due to the data centers that are being built, which are private enterprise, wow, we're going to need to raise bond money to pay for the transmission lines to drag power to private enterprise data centers that have yet to return a return on investment or a return of investment. Those bonds, effective tomorrow morning, if you can't pay the debt today, and the average tax bill for the average property tax bill for the average homeowner is 8.6% of their gross income, and they can't pay $5 off on the outstanding fraudulent school district bond debt today, how exactly are they going to pay tomorrow morning for infrastructure, for private enterprise in power lines to pay for the bonds that are going to be necessary to create the transmission lines? And the answer is it isn't. So what we have here is a crisis of confidence. And as that crisis of confidence continues to grow larger, so does the bond debt by virtue of the compound cumulative interest on the outstanding fraud. This is about a crisis of confidence. Things will go bad very quickly if they don't tell the truth and say, we are going to handle this in the following manner. And that manner is to be debated. But you can say, fine, we will tie our currency to a valuation, let's say it's 40% of precious metals, and we'll bump the precious metals. There's all sorts of ways to handle this. The problem is, you must admit that the Federal Reserve is the main culprit in this. You must admit that the school districts are the exact same thing as the Federal Reserve. The school districts use mom and pop as their printing press. The Federal Reserve simply turns on the printing press through the U.S. Treasury. The point of the matter is these things are hooked at the hip because they are fraud. The system is worth saving. The U.S. dollar is worth saving. It must be saved because here's the ultimate crux of this problem, which is what socialism is about. It doesn't want to be saved. It doesn't want to be accountable. But if you don't have accountability in a system, then what is to stop this exact same problem under a new currency from recreating itself all over again? This is why socialism has to be codified in law as illegal. And every socialist policy removed that has created the fraud. And until this happens, this crisis of confidence is going to continue to grow. And we will end up, if they don't get serious about this, more than likely in civil war and or secession. Because people aren't going to tolerate this. When the grocery stores are empty, you're only 9 meals away, anywhere. Doesn't matter where in the United States. You're 9 meals away from a civil war. And
tell me about this case right here. There it is on the screen.
That's the amicus brief that we filed on my case at the Texas Supreme Court. And every opportunity I get to talk, and thank you very much for calling me back on, because every opportunity I get, I'm explaining this not just to the public, but I'm trying to get to the judges across the United States to make them understand why this is so important. This has much bigger ramifications in Texas, this case does. And on my website, there's a document that says the importance of the Vexler case to Texas. But the truth is, it's the importance of the Vexler case across the United States of America. And the main emphasis of this case is either the law exists, the black letter of the law, or it doesn't. Opposing counsel is taking the position, well, we don't want discovery of the fraud that we are committing on the public. This fraud is irrefutable. In fact, the data is insurmountable. We have video, we have audio. I have testimony from depositions. This fraud has occurred. The courts didn't know how to handle it. The prior courts because they said, well, it stops at the appraisal review board. Well, by law, no, it can't. The appraisal review boards have no knowledge whatsoever on uniform standards of professional appraisal practice, nor do they have the ability to add one and one, nor do they understand the fraud that is being committed, and nor do they have the ability to discover the fraud. They are not a judge. That's what this case is about. So in reality, everything that you're speaking to here today hovers around this exact issue. They do not want discovery on the fraud that they have committed. What is that? That is not free market capitalism. That is not constitutional. That's a fraud.
Does this go to the whole thing that the Epstein thing is going to as well, which is people are saying, we can't really trust our elected officials. So many of our elected officials are compromised, they're captured. But how many of our local officials are compromised or captured because either they are protecting the system that they know they get their paycheck and pension from, or they are willingly participated in setting this system up and continuing to turn a blind eye to it? I mean, at what point are the local prosecutors that have thrown people in jail and prosecuted? What point should they be prosecuted? I mean, talk about the hypocrisy, throwing people in jail for stealing or crimes, financial crimes or whatever else. Yet some of them may have knowingly turned a blind eye to this, which would be huge compared to some of the people they've prosecuted. No, two wrongs don't make a right, but you can't have a system that's not based on legal standards for all, not just the people in power.
Ergo, what are we? The United States of America is a republic. A republic means that the laws are applicable to all. The bending of what has happened is socialism. This is social policies. Well, no, laws are applied to you, but not to me. That is what creates fraud. When you don't hold people accountable for their actions, which is what a republic is based on. And I would refer people even to a quote by Thomas Paine: "A thirst for absolute power is the natural disease of monarchy." To the evil of monarchy, we have added hereditary succession. Well, when you're talking about people who are compromised, all you have to do, Bush 1, Bush 2, Clintons, Obama, you understand what's going on here. And in Canada, you have Trudeau 1 and Trudeau 2. And the problem with that is that it's an insult to the imposition of every citizen, doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, by thinking that these people have any right in government. So these problems are all connected because they look at it and say, well, again, the law is applicable to you, mom and pop, but not applicable to me. And to your point on the DAs, I have made this point. I filed a criminal complaint nailing a couple of DAs over this exact issue. When I dropped off the amount of evidence that we've got, they simply shrugged their shoulders and said, well, what do you want me to do with it? Here's an idea. Go to the judge and say, Your Honor, I absolutely want to prosecute this. How do we get this done? But they don't. Therefore, those DAs should be removed. And DAs can be removed by the Attorney General. You can impeach a district attorney. Now, a DA under law does not necessarily have to take a case. They can simply say, I'm not taking it. They may not be capable of taking it, but that doesn't mean that the crimes didn't occur. If they say we're not capable of handling this case, then get somebody who is. Bring in the FBI, the DOJ, and the SEC, which, by the way, we filed criminal complaints with all three of them.
Right. And you talked about that with us now a few months ago. Where are we at with those?
Well, isn't it interesting that on December 7th, excuse me, on December 7th, the Attorney General here in the state of Texas announced a 1,000 district investigation into the school districts. That's where we are. That happened as a direct result of those criminal complaints. I'm certain that the DOJ reached out and said, what the hell is going on? So that happened because, as it turns out, and I said in the beginning, this was not personal against the district attorney, but the bottom line is that the DA, the Attorney General is the sole person responsible in law. Hold on.
Yeah. Responsible in law. And yet, of course, that Attorney General is running for office to be governor, but it looks like he's not going to get the endorsement of Donald Trump. What I'm reading today.
So, Attorney Paxton, under the Texas Education Agency, is the party responsible to ensure that money exists to pay off the bonds. And if that money doesn't exist, he's responsible. Well, that was the point that was laid out to the DOJ, the SEC, and the FBI. Now, the SEC, it's important to notice that bonds fall into the category of the SEC. The SEC literally can walk into a school district because they have subpoena power and say, we're not asking you, we're telling you, turn these files over. And if you don't, we'll arrest you on the spot. They have the power. That was the point of bringing in the SEC. Well, that's why Attorney General Paxton has now gone out and said, fine, I see it, I understand, we will open an investigation. And they made that announcement on December 7th.
So, as we get ready to wrap here, now we're like 17 trillion. Your buddy out of California thinks this whole thing is $17 trillion, right?
The attorney in Washington, they believe it's 17. I'm at 5.1 trillion because we can quantify that. We can see it. What we can't see is the nexus of the off-balance sheet financing, the energy contracts, the solar fields through the 313 agreements. We can't see these things, but that's where the subpoena power of the SEC comes in. So the attorney looked at it and said, well, but under law, these banks are required to hold X% of their cash holdings in bonds. Well, the fact that is the case, the spider web in theory can grow up to 17 trillion, meaning what's being shown as U.S. national debt doesn't take into account the private bonds. Therein lies the problem. Now, somebody would turn around and say, well, but our M2, give or take, is around 28 trillion. I don't know that that statement is true. I know that that's what we're being told, but it doesn't appear that this math stacks. Could there be more bonds out there than were actually being reported? Could the Federal Reserve has printed more money, the U.S. Treasury printed more money than what is actually being reported? How much of that is inside of the 600 trillion roughly of derivatives? I don't know that anybody's got the answer to that. I don't know that anybody wants the answer to that. But the point of the matter is, none of that would have happened, not a stitch of it, if socialism was codified as illegal. These policies that have existed, this blowing the bubble, this nonstop printing is fraud. When you print money not backed by an asset, it's called counterfeiting. It's fraud. When you take money from mom and pop in the form of property tax and you use that money to go into your pet project, say it's a theater in Conroe, Texas, as an example. And by the way, the story is true. Well, that's fraud. You took property taxes for a pet project on an allegedly historical building that somebody defined as historical. But wouldn't it be interesting to find out that people on council are participating in getting money from that theater? It's called embezzlement. That is a socialist policy. We just won't tell the public what we're doing. Fine, we're on the board. My company, because I'm on the board, does X. We get paid X. The point of the matter is, I've seen this before. I saw it with the Capitol Theater building in Windsor. I was heavily involved in a group of buildings following the 1968 riots in Detroit. So this is in 1984. The buildings needed to be repaired. They were beautiful Art Deco buildings, but the bottom line is they never got repaired. The system fell apart there, and money was used to allegedly fix the buildings, which never happened. The point of the matter is these are socialist policies and need to be defined as such. And socialism needs to be codified. And until they do this, as codified as illegal, the same credibility problem will keep raising its head. That is why we have to save this system, and that is to restore the credibility of the United States government.
Now, if they want to read more on this, of course, we've got the website up there. So one of my callers called in today and asked, because I mentioned you and I showed your website, talked about what, I was going to try to get you on tonight. And she called in and said, what can we do? What can we do? And I said, well, I think he is working on something where citizens can be involved in class action lawsuits or something, if I remember correctly, right?
Believe it or not, I saw the second copy of that website on Monday, and it looks really good. What I'm trying to do, with the help of the people in Washington and people in Florida, people in Texas, is to create a system where the attorneys themselves will pay to get access so that we can spend money for the purpose of creating class action lawsuits across the United States. I can't carry this on my own, obviously. But that's what we're doing. So it's a very clean website, but we will charge the attorneys a fee to get access to the class action documents, and we will help put mom and pop. So let's say we have 100 mom and pops. Let's say it's in Colorado. We can create a body. We can create a plaintiff made up of X amount of people for the attorneys. We can package all this because we've stepped through it from A to Z. So on one hand, we just found out about the Texas Supreme Court yesterday. So the response from opposing counsel is due on the 17th of February.
And who is opposing counsel? Who is it? Is it a state official?
No, it's a private law firm.
Mm-hmm. They're representing who?
Well, that's a very good question. They're representing the Denton Central Appraisal District. They are representing the chief appraiser, but they're also representing themselves as an officer of the court. And I'm sure you can read into exactly where I'm headed with that. They're going to have one hell of a problem because they are literally saying, and that is going to be their response, well, we don't want the public to be able to question how the fraud is being committed. And my response to that is, okay, and why not? You're an officer of the court. Be real careful.
When is your first court hearing? And will the public be able to track it and hear it?
I don't know the answer to both of those because it's really up to the Supreme Court. It's my understanding that the Supreme Court of Texas, they could have said no, but with the amicus brief, with the videos, with the criminal complaints, there's an awful lot of pressure being brought down because the pressure itself is simply the truth. Either the law exists or it doesn't. That's what this comes down to.
So bottom line is you're going to get a hearing before the Supreme Court. I mean, that's happening.
More than likely. I mean, they could just simply say, go away, right? They have that authority. I don't believe that's going to happen because they asked for a response from opposing counsel, which means they're seeing something. I don't know what. We will respond. We will ask for oral argument, and we will make it a point because, again, I don't know what the Supreme Court judges know, but we will make it a point that the Attorney General just launched a 1,000 district investigation. This isn't going away. This is going to get bigger, and it's not just Texas. Now, the Supreme Court will say, well, we're confined to just Texas. I agree. I understand that completely. But as your viewers can see, because their lives are being touched by this exact same fraud, when they go to appeal their central appraisal district taxes and valuation, they run into the exact same wall that I ran into. So what we're doing is correcting that. We're going to make that wall disappear. They will be found to be fraudulent and let the chips fall where they may.
So are we going to hear this as a national story? In other words, are we on the precipice of this becoming a major national story? And there's not many outlets. There's a few. I found out about it through watching a program, and you've been on some other shows. Chris Martenson been on his show, but there's only a few of us that have been covering this in the conservative media market. Is this about to become a national story that a lot of people are going to start covering?
I wish it would. I wish it would have gone national 4 or 5 months ago. But little by little, because of the pressure of the criminal complaints, we're getting where we need to go. The press on a national scale somebody I know who's an attorney out of Florida reached out to over 160 different outlets. He took it upon himself to do it. And all we heard back was crickets.
Wow.
Now, you could say that they're not smart enough to handle it. I would agree with that. However, they're not there for their own ego. They're there to answer questions for mom and pop, and they can't. And that's part of the problem. They become propaganda machines that only want to repeat what their overlords have told them to do. The problem here is this touches the lives of every single property owner, but it also touches the lives of every single citizen. This inflation, you go to a grocery store, this is real. Well, do you realize that in your cappuccino, there's 7 elements of real estate tax? When you start thinking of how this real estate tax touches society, this is the problem. But I have to be able to communicate it to a willing press. And so far, they have turned a blind eye. But regardless of that, through your help and a handful of others' help, the story is getting out. And I've received calls from governors that realize, okay, this is real. There's a lot of people that are paying attention. Those are the people who are honest. The ones who aren't honest, they fall into the bucket of socialists.
So let me ask you this.
Their money put in your pocket.
Let me ask you this in closing then. At what point are you watching inflation? Because I watched a guy the other night, I think it was Peter Schiff or someone, was talking about at this rate of inflation we're going to be moving into, you're going over the next few years see the cost of living double or triple. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it sounds reasonable to me. At what point does this cause this whole thing to collapse? Because schools cannot operate with double and triple expenditures, everything costing 2 to 3 times more than it does today, without them having to then go in and get more bonds. But at what point does this whole thing collapse before they could even go and try to go back to the trough?
So it was stated by Scott Bessent on Tuesday of this week that he doesn't want to hurt the value of housing. Well, okay. Are you talking about new housing? Are you talking about existing inventory? Bessent actually used my language. And interestingly enough, so did RFK, where they said the property taxes have to be repealed.
Is that because they are aware of this dirty little secret?
Here's the bottom line. If they are serious about fixing this, there's one fast way to do it and gain credibility simultaneously. Repeal the property tax in favor of the uniform state sales tax. You just wiped out $5.1 trillion in bonds, but you restored the balance sheet to mom and pop because they now own the land underneath their asset in perpetuity. And as far as the inflation is concerned, every single time, without exception, that they step up and say, we need more money for this and we need more money for that, and it's not based on free market capitalism, it's based on a wish list, that is socialism. That is a socialist policy. Now, socialist policies have nothing to do with a social policy. You want to get rid of hunger? Amen, that's a social policy. Everybody can agree this has to be done. Same thing for cancer. But a socialist policy takes your money and puts it in their pocket under the guise, while we're doing this, whatever it is, for the benefit of society. And it never turns out to be the case, especially when bonds are involved. This whole thing with school district bonds is a pure con. The Federal Reserve, since the day it was created in 1913, has been a con.
Absolutely.
It was about taking people's money and putting it in the hands of the banks. That's all it was. But you see, the funny thing about, watch this for a second. No government on the planet can outrun the rule of 72. No government on the planet can outrun reverse amortization. That is exactly what the Federal Reserve has done. That is why we are where we are. So somebody says, well, okay, inflation is going to go up. It's going to be painful. If they keep printing, yeah, we're going to end up with the Weimar Republic. History's going to repeat itself. The point is, it doesn't have to. This is savable. The credibility of the United States government is on the hook here. It's on the line. We get sick, by the way. So does the rest of the globe. Canada's in worse shape than we are. Canada's a country with a population between Windsor and Montreal. That's where the majority of the population lives. It's 1.5 times the size of the United States. It's a very wealthy resource country. Can it sustain itself? No. Why? Socialist policies. Here's the point. All governments that are involved in this type of nonsense, Germany, London, European Union, Canada, Venezuela, doesn't matter. All these countries have got to, Japan, have got to sit down simultaneously and say, we're going to do a journal entry. We're going to wipe out these debts between the countries. We're going to wipe out these bonds. And people are going to say, oh, you can't wipe out the bonds. Yeah, yes, we can. It has to be done. Why? Because those people who put that money into the bonds, if a portion of your principal can get protected, good. However, the interest, you've been a pig at the trough, and the trough has been fraud. You participated. Those people who sold you those bonds participated in the fraud. You lose, and you deserve to lose. And I know that that's a bitter pill. I get it. But something has to happen because the world depends on the United States. It's time to show some leadership and say, this is how we're going to fix this. It's all about the black letter of the law. The law does exist. The problem of socialism is it doesn't want to be held accountable. And people allowed this nonsense to fester. Yeah, that's why we are where we are.
And the question is, will it fester until it pops? And then mom and pop and the average person is wiped out in their pension and retirement accounts and all these other things. But, we're racing against the clock here while the dollar's diving. And, I just don't see, Chris Martenson thinks that, this whole system is likely to collapse before the end of President Trump's presidency based on where we're headed now. And of course, we're looking at banks, bank failures, liquidity issues, derivatives, and now, thanks to you, school bonds. But the good news, I'll try to wrap it on a positive. It looks like your case is going to be heading to the Supreme Court. So go there, folks. Look at letters, articles, and discussions. Letters, articles, and discussions as well. Lots of information there. And then, of course, you can go to Mockingbird Properties, and then do the mockingbirdsproperties.com/DCAD, as you see on the website. Stay on this, folks, because this is a huge story. And thank you for your persistence on this, Mitch.
Thank you very much for allowing me to explain what's going on. It's important. The more people that know, the better off we're all going to be, including the politicians. They need to know, they need to take action. And everybody that owns property, and even those that don't, including renters, you need to participate in your local community. You've got to get involved. You cannot sit there anymore, because if you do, they will continue to steal your money. The only way they're held accountable, literally, is by mom and pop getting involved in their local community. Get involved at the city council, get involved at your school district, whatever it takes. Become aware and hold them accountable.
And get folks over to mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD to read on these reports. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you very much.
We'll be right back, guys.
True beauty isn't applied. It's nourished from within. Bella Grace Elixir, a luxurious, scientifically crafted blend designed to restore radiance, vitality, and strength at a cellular level. At the heart of Bella Grace Elixir lies cat's claw, a powerful herb from the Amazon known for its ability to control inflammation and protect collagen. With Verisol collagen peptides, it goes beyond the surface, stimulating your body's natural collagen production to reduce fine lines, improve skin elasticity, and promote real, visible change. Bella Grace Elixir doesn't stop at collagen. It includes astaxanthin, one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, astaxanthin protects your skin from harmful UV rays and environmental stress, while locking in hydration and promoting a radiant, youthful glow. Experience the power of nature with Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Discover the science behind Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Read powerful testimonials from doctors and real customers who've experienced life-changing results, and explore other wellness products from Bella Grace. Bella Grace Elixir is more than just a product. It's a solution. Visit melissahousebg.com today.
Joining me now is Shahram Hadian, born and raised in Iran, pastor. He's been a police officer. He joins us now to talk about the talks that have been breaking down with Iran. Now it seems as though there's talks that have been scheduled for this Friday. Joining me now is Shahram Hadian. Shahram, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being here.
Good to be back with you, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so we were talking on radio today at 1 o'clock Central. I think you were listening because you were texting me. The talks were breaking down. President Trump is in the Oval Office saying the leader of Iran should be very, very worried. Where are we at with the talks? Because Iran sounds like they're just really not willing to negotiate on some very key issues. And it looked like everything was going to fall apart. Now, apparently, President Trump is getting pushback from some Arab nations to go to talks this Friday in Oman. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The talks have moved from Turkey to Oman. And you're correct that the pushback is constantly there from these Arab Muslim nations to continue negotiation. What the Iranian regime has said is that the only thing we're going to talk about is dealing with our nuclear aspirations. They're not going to talk about anything that deals with what's going on inside the country, what's going on with the massacre of its people. You had the numbers that Aaron mentioned on air, which is shocking, I know, when he mentioned 86,000 massacred potentially. But I said to you a couple of weeks ago that I think before this is said and done, we potentially could be in six figures. So I don't think that's shocking. When the regime itself says 30,000 they confirm, you know you can double or triple that number safely, and that's not including the secret executions and all those that are being killed in the hospitals and subsequently later. What I just don't understand, Brandon, is I don't understand how we keep getting into this mess of setting up talks, of setting up, quote, deals, of setting up negotiation. I get it on face value if the United States or Israel is going to attack Iran, and what Aaron broke at the end of your radio segment today about that now there's word that Iran is going to go offense instead of defense, again, to some extent is not surprising. But if the United States and Israel is setting up a scenario where, well, hey, we got to try, right? We got to try to make it look like we're going to talk before we have to strike them. Okay, I get that on paper, but in reality, this regime and Islam as a whole continues. It's the same rabbit trail. It's the same deception. It's the same stall tactic. We see they're buying time. They're moving assets potentially out of Iran. We see certain Iranian officials being granted asylum in other countries. I think the regime is done. The problem is, how will it be done, and how many people need to die for it to be done? So yes, right now it's scheduled for Friday in Oman, but if they're only going to talk about, quote, the nuclear aspirations and not the brutal massacre and genocide of their own people, and the fact that they cannot take care of their own people, then what is there to talk about? That's what I don't understand.
Well,
yeah.
And I know you're not a military expert per se. I'm certainly not. That's why I interview a lot of guys that are. But I'm reading articles that say that America better realize that we would have a hard time, our U.S. Navy would have a hard time fighting Iran in their waters, just getting resupplied with weaponry, armament. You know, they're talking about the fact that this is a much bigger issue to fight Iran in their waters, off their shores, than the American people are being told. And I heard last week that President Trump, and again, these are reports that were coming out, kind of was backing down when it came to Iran with the, hey, help is on the way kind of thing, because maybe he got a very serious assessment from some military guys saying, this is what their capabilities are. And maybe in the end we'll win, but we could lose a ship or two. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm reading articles from guys that are historians and military guys and geopolitical guys who have researched this for years saying this is not as easy as one might think it is.
I don't disagree with that statement. I don't think anybody thought it was going to be easy. First of all, this regime has had 47 years to fortify itself, number one. This regime has been propped up by China, by Russia, by the Europeans, including now potentially Turkey, and of course the Arab Emirate nations. And this regime has proxies. You heard Aaron talk about the Houthis rearming. I never thought that if they were going to attack, it would be easy. Plus, the grave mistake that the United States made and Trump made is by not allowing Israel to continue what they were doing back in June of last year. That has given them time to also regroup and refortify and reassess their tactics, because Israel was decimating their upper leadership. Israel was decimating all of their command and control structure, which would have then softened the blow. I mean, remember when Israel hit back in June, it wasn't one day, right? It was multiple. First of all, this is why earlier this week, when you saw those explosions in Iran, and I know you had Annie on to talk about that, it immediately reminded me of last June, because what did we see last June? We saw the same things inside the country, very weird explosions. The regime was claiming there were gas lines. Yeah, gas lines exploding in 9 different cities. So immediately I thought, okay, that is potentially the Israeli element of what's inside the country. Again, softening the way. They're kind of putting those blows in there to soften the way. But Israel, it was a concentrated multiple day attack, which would have needed to continue had the U.S. not intervened. So no way this is going to be easy, and no way is Iran not going to launch their proxies. Here's my point. The point is, if they don't do it now, then when? Because whether they do it now or whether this goes down the road another year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and the Iranian people were massacred for nothing. Help is on the way. 3 weeks. It's now been over, 3 weeks and 1 day since the president said help is on the way. If help is not on the way, then that was an absolute waste of young people and lives that will go down, I think, in infamy as far as the failure of this administration, maybe bigger than Jimmy Carter's betrayal back in 1977 and 78 and 79. So I never thought it was going to be easy if the United States was going to hit. And I agree with you. It's a major blow when those Arab Emirate nations that you said earlier on radio are buying out America. Look at the Qataris. When those countries said you cannot use our bases, our air bases, and you cannot fly over our territory, that then pigeonholed the only way that the United States can do this is to go off from the waters. And that also creates a problem. So that makes me mad, because why are we allowing those entities and those nations all the access in America, allowing them to buy us out when we need those assets and when we need that access, they're saying, no way, we're not going to give it to you. So it's complicated things for sure. But Brandon, I don't know where else to go from here. It's either now or I don't know if there's going to be another chance like this to take this regime out that's affecting the entire world.
Well, the question is, though, how many ballistic missiles do they have? I just pulled up a report from June of 2025 from the Times of Israel. They have thousands, apparently. Top Netanyahu aide says Iran still has thousands of ballistic missiles, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 ballistic missiles they still have. So, again, I don't know. And how many of these are nuclear tipped? How many nuclear tipped missiles do they have?
Well, that's part of the question is I think if they go down that road, the only place they're getting those is from whether they bought it off of North Korea, whether they've gotten it from China or Russia. But listen, that then opens the door for a more broader war, right? Which I don't know if China or Russia is ready to get into. I know some people want to sort of fearmonger about this is World War III, this is World War III. Again, I disagree, because Iran is a very different animal. I don't mean the regime, I mean the people. I don't necessarily think that this would be even a regional war if it was to happen. But will there be loss? For sure. Are U.S. warships at risk? For sure. Because again, thanks to the Qataris and the Saudis and the Arab Emirates not cooperating with us, this has made this much harder. And some people say, well, we had to wait. Yeah, we had to wait because we didn't have those resources, right? We had to wait because we couldn't get our planes over there to be able to then hit Iran from those areas. We had to go to sea. And again, like you said, I'm not a military expert, but common sense would say, well, if you can't go by land, if you can't fly those planes in by land, you got to go by sea. So now that takes a long time to get these armadas and these flotillas or their naval carriers and everything into the region, which is what we've seen over the last three weeks. So, but my point is, the U.S. government, and particularly I took offense to the clip from Rubio, because though I like Rubio, it makes me so upset when this guy keeps saying, oh, it's economic, it's economic, it's economic. This is not economic, dude. And I'm not saying dude to you. I'm saying to our Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, it is not economic. Are they not even listening to what the Iranian people are shouting? Are they not even listening to what the diaspora, with these massive rallies that we've seen outside the country in Europe and in North America, are shouting when they're saying down with Khomeini, down with the dictators, down with Islam, Javid Shah, long live the Shah. So what this is, yes, okay. In December, it initially started as economic strikes. That lasted 3 or 4 days. It then immediately turned into, we are done with Islam, we are done with this regime. And so that frustrates me, Brandon, because they're minimizing not only the cries of the Iranian people, not only the sacrifice of the Iranian people, let's not forget, almost 50% of Iran is under the age of 30. So the majority, the hyper majority of those that have been massacred are young people because of simply those demographics. So it is absolutely an insult to what has happened and the massacre and the lives that have been lost if you make it an economic issue. Oh, they just can't feed their people. That's why the people are mad. I mean, that is poor diplomacy, and it is an insult to the Iranian people. And in fact, in my opinion, it's an insult to us as Americans here, because we got to be smarter than that. This is Iranian people telling the American people, hey, you know what? We're done with Islam. How about you guys in America? How about you guys in America stop kissing up to the Muslims, stop kissing up to the Islamic movement, stop placating them, stop giving them bases, stop giving them access, stop giving them access to your schools and your media and your universities. I mean, this is just a matter of deep frustration right now, because I hear all sides of it and I get it. We're going to have casualties. They're going to launch their proxies. All of that is real. I don't think any of that's going to change whether we attack them now or we attack them in 2 years. Wow. This is, I think, the hour, Brandon. This is the hour. Because why is this the hour? Because the Iranian people made it the hour. The Iranian people, by shedding their blood, if it is 86,000, as Aaron said earlier, 86,000, mostly young people, have made it clear this is the hour. So history will judge America, Trump, and what the world does, in this hour.
TILministry.com, TILministry.com. Great analysis tonight by American Iranian Shahram Hadian. His daddy was high-ranking in the military there in Iran, got out 6 weeks before the fall of the Shah because he didn't want to live under Sharia Islamic law. And he has been trying to warn America about what's coming. And by the way, are you following this Qatari city in Arizona? I got a phone call today from a listener in Arizona warning about it. We covered it with Annie the other day. Are you following this Qatar city in Arizona?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I had said last year is I believe that what you're witnessing with these cities that are popping up, that they're either funded by Qatar, in this case in Arizona, or potentially from other foreign entities, the Pakistanis in Texas, the Saudis. I believe these are these smart cities that they're merging with the globalists, in my opinion. They're merging with that Agenda 2030 sort of plan, and they're being greenlit to launch these cities. So I just asked the question: how much more access can you give to your enemy within your nation before the judgment of God says, I'm out? You know, God's hand says, I'm out. You're on your own, America. You're on your own, people of America. So you've said it so many times. This is part of, I think, the deception, the judgment on America. Mm-hmm. We are falling for this. So yes, I'm tracking that there as well. This is new strategy, right?
And by the way, while we're talking, you've got the World Summit going on in United Arab Emirates, right?
Yeah, right there. Right. Exactly. Right.
So the World Government Summit is run by the Muslims in the UAE.
Exactly. This is the Islamic movement right in the center of the global governance, the global economy. They're right in the center of that beast system that Revelation 13 talks about. And therefore, they're being greenlit to put forth these cities. They want to do it over there in their part of the world, but why not do it here in America or in Gaza, right? The Gaza plan, which looks like a smart city. It's what they're being greenlit to do. And I think that, unfortunately, we're falling for it. So the Patriots in Arizona better wake up and understand. Texas, Arizona, here in Tennessee, this is the kind of stuff we're going to start seeing from this foreign money. We got to shut it down and say, stop with this foreign money and these foreign governments being able to buy up our nation.
Amen. TILministry.com, Shahram Hadian, TILministry.com. Thank you, Shahram.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Shahram Hadian checking in. Check out his site. He also is on our broadcast network here each and every weekend at worldviewtube.com. We'll be right back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed. All right, join me now for a quick financial update is Michael Weiner. All right, gold and silver popped back up right around 5,000, just under 5,000 for gold. And I think silver's around $87 and some odd cents, or $88 and some odd cents. Gold is at $4,965 thereabout. Michael, why did it pop back up?
I said on Friday it would, because it was a short sell. There was no fundamental reason why gold went down. As a matter of fact, the smart people, the pundits that were on TV that were smart, came out openly and stated that they were legitimately no fundamentals involved here. It was a short sell. Short sell for the novice is very simple. It's like I said, it's when the people in the market want to make some money. Gold went up extremely fast. I didn't expect as quickly as it did. I expected 5,000 by March 1st. I didn't expect it by the middle of January, but President Trump fueled the fire with his comments about currency, which sent it up real quickly. There is gold right now, and I have to say some of the smart people today said it the best. Gold last year outperformed silver. Outperformed the stock market. Gold this month even with the drawback, outperform the market. That's like the enemy right now. They're scared of the market. They're scared of the gold market. They want to sit back and throw any monkey wrench they can in to sit back and create some sort of turmoil. The problem that they have right now is they don't have the power. Gold is a global financial instrument. We are going through a financial metamorphosis. 6,000 the end of the year, 5,800 worst case. Just relax. I mean, there's absolutely nothing to be concerned about right here. If it went down another $100, buy it.
If it went down another $100, buy it. So how many people jumped in on the $400 drop?
Not enough. That's usually the whole thing. Americans are literally indoctrinated from childhood to pay higher prices. If there's a deal, there's something wrong with it. What's the matter with it? Is it broke? There's nothing fundamentally wrong with gold. What you need to pay attention to is the fundamentals in economy. We're going digital. We're watching literally our real estate markets, no matter how hard they try, still wavering. We're watching our unemployment levels still going up, and we're watching people not getting jobs the way we hope they wanted to. It's not all President Trump's fault. He's living with what cards that he was dealt, but they cannot be solved. We have overnight, the debt is only way to get rid of debt, Brandon, is to devalue and debase and digitize. That's what's going on now. The markets are where people should be watching for safety and safe haven and reevaluation and things of that nature, especially those people who hold IRAs. IRAs are the fruit of all evils for the federal government. There's $50 to $80 trillion in retirement plans. What better way for them to pay off the national debt with our money? They nationalize those retirement plans. They grab up hard dollars. They say, guess what? We paid off the national debt. Well, guess what? No, we didn't. We did. And they're the ones that made it. So they took our money. They ran it up to the moon, giving out literally hair clips to people in Panama. And the next thing you know, we're going to pay it twice by taking our retirement plan. That's exactly what they're looking to do. That's why Reagan created precious metals IRAs. They protect you. You better pay attention to it before it's too late.
Indeed. All right, guys, I wanted to get an update in here real quick from Michael Weiner. Get your free packet of information at worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com, or call 1-877-864-1072. Tell me about the bank failure on Friday, and are we going to see more of those in 2026?
I think it's going to become political. I think if the sort of who you know type of attitude, like we saw what happened with Biden, those two banks that went under miraculously were protected 100%. The banking system right now is Trump's not doing that. So with them not doing that, I think you're going to definitely see more of that happening. And I think that the overall issue as we go into digital economy is even going to get a little bit more active. I think you're going to see more activity with some of these banks. I think sometimes some people say to me, well, I deal with my neighborhood bank because, they're nice and they're right there and, they're going to treat me well. But guess what? They all have the same laws. There's no different law for, Midway down the road bank and Chase Bank. There's no different law. They might not treat you as nice, but guess what? Chase isn't going out of business. If they do, so will the government. So will Wells Fargo. I mean, all these banks, I hate to say I'm not a purveyor of loving the banking system. I'm not. I believe in creating your own bank. But please do not take comfort in the fact that credit unions or your neighborhood bank offers you better security. They have the same laws. I mean, really, they don't.
All right, get your pack, folks. 1-877-864-1072 or worldviewgold.com. Keep us posted. Gold back up almost at 5,000. Silver back up over 88. And we'll keep you posted as the story keeps unfolding into 2026. Thank you, Michael.
Have time to jump in while you can. Take care. Have a good evening.
Indeed it is. Thank you, Michael. All right, guys, that's our broadcast for tonight. If you appreciate what we're doing here, we need your support. WorldviewFoundation.com. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. WorldviewFoundation.com. And again, thank you to all of you that support this broadcast by going and visiting worldviewtube.com/sponsors, because I think those are great products there. And I also think you're going to benefit from them as I do, whether it's Bella Grace, Numi, Gatatana, and with each purchase, you also help support the program. So thank you for going to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Till next time, I'm Brandon House. May God save America. Take care.